The steam hits you first, thick and soft, carrying the murmur of a dozen voices. It clings to your skin as you step deeper into the chamber, and for a moment, the chill of the Roman morning forgets you exist. You are standing in a public bathhouse, and nobody here is using soap. Nobody is using toilet paper either, but that thought comes later. Right now, you are watching a man run a curved piece of metal down his own arm, dragging a thin line of oil and grime across his skin. He does this without flinching, without hurry. It looks almost like a ritual. Here is the thing nobody tells you about the ancient world. They were not fumbling in the dark. They were not waiting for us to invent proper cleaning. And the moment you understand how they actually did it, the whole story flips. The Romans were clean, impossibly, stubbornly clean. They achieved it without a bar of soap in sight. The mystery is not whether they managed. The mystery is why we ever believed they could not. So step deeper into the steam. The answer is written on that curved blade and on the sponge that hangs from a stick in the corner. All you have to do is look. Here is the little phrase that most of us carry around like a worn coin. The Romans were dirty. It gets repeated with a shrug, a slight grimace. No soap, no toilet paper, no idea. Just a bunch of people in togas throwing up at banquets and calling it culture. There is a version of this story that feels comfortable because it makes us feel advanced. We have our showers, our shelves of bottles, our soft white rolls. We assume the past was a worse version of the present, just older, but the comfortable version is the one that falls apart. The Romans did not lack cleanliness, they lacked our specific tools. And that small difference changes everything. Think about the problem for a second. If you had no soap, no shampoo, no deodorant, no toilet paper, how would you get clean? Not a little clean. Properly clean, head to foot, every single day. Before you answer, set the scene in your mind. You are walking into a bathhouse in the middle of the empire. The floor is warm beneath your bare feet. The air is heavy with heat and candlelight. The comfortable story we carry around is already starting to crack. If you want to keep walking into rooms like this, to see what else you were taught that is simply not true, subscribe now so you do not miss the next layer. And if the Strigil is a word you have never heard before, type it right there in the comments. Strigil. And you have brought nothing with you. No towel, no soap, no caddy. Just your bare skin and something small held in your hand, a curved blade of metal worn smooth by use. That blade is the first crack in the story you were told. The Strigil. Let me say it slowly because the word does half the work. Strigil. A curved metal scraper, dull enough to never break skin, shaped to follow the contours of your arms, your legs, your back. But it does not remove dirt on its own. It needs a partner. Olive oil. This is where the whole system reveals its logic. Before you enter the hot room, you cover your body in oil, not a polite dab. You pour it on. Olive oil, cheap and abundant, pressed from the trees that filled the empire. Then you work, you sweat, you exercise in the courtyard until the oil and the sweat and the dust of the city all blend together on your skin. Now the Strigil has a job. It is not scraping your skin raw. It is scraping off a thin layer of oil that has caught the dirt, the dead cells, the day itself. One pass, and the dark line on the blade is proof that the system works. You would not call this cleaning by our modern vocabulary. But watch it happen, and you will call it clever. You will call it intentional. You might even call it wise. There is a rhythm to the whole bath. You start in the warm room, then the hot room, then the steam, then the scraping. And the scraping is the part that most history books skip. Stand in that room for a while, and you will see the social structure of the entire empire reflected on bare skin. The wealthy arrive with their own oil, their own Strigil, sometimes an attendant to do the scraping. The poor share the cheap oil that sits in a clay jar by the door. There is a sponge on a stick too. That is the tersorium, the answer to a question you were raised not to ask. Communal, shared, rinsed, between uses in a gutter of running water. You will find it in the latrine, not the bath. And it worked. But here is where the cleverness deepens into something you might not expect. The bathhouse was not a place to get clean. It was a place where cleaning became ceremony. The scrape of the Strigil, the scent of oil, the slap of water against hot stone. All of it layered into a daily ritual that millions of people shared from Rome to the farthest provinces. Nobody invented that in a laboratory. Nobody patented it. It grew out of a simple observation, repeated across generations until it became second nature. Here is what that observation was. Water alone does not lift oil. and oil alone does not lift dirt. But oil followed by a smooth edge will lift both away, leaving skin that feels strange and new. That feeling of strangeness and newness after the scrape. It's a window into a world where cleaning was a communal art, not a private chore. If you want to keep walking through these hidden doorways into our deep past, subscribe and walk with me. And if the Strigil surprised you, type scrape in the comments. I'll know you're one of the curious ones. That last part is the secret, the feel of it. The lightness after scraping, the coolness when the air finally touches your clean skin. The Romans did not have our chemistry, so they built their cleanliness from physics and patience. And that is the hidden logic. What looks primitive to us was, in fact, a deep understanding of how human skin actually works. Not a missing invention, a different path to the same destination. So what was the destination, really? Why spend an entire afternoon every day on a routine so elaborate that it had its own buildings, its own workers, its own social rules? Because cleanliness was never just about being clean. It was about belonging. The bathhouse was where the empire talked to itself, where gossip spread, where disputes settled, where a new arrival to the city learned how to become a Roman. The grinding of the Strigil was the sound of a city defining itself. Now stop and think about your own routine for a second. The quick shower, the swipe of deodorant, the bottle that promises freshness with a squeeze. You do not think about it. You just do it in the same order on autopilot. That impulse is not modern. It is old. Older than the empire. Older than the written word. We are the species that figured out how to get clean by observation, communities that refined their rituals for thousands of years. The specifics changed. The need never did. When they found empty olive oil amphorae at bathhouse ruins, yes, the archaeologists looked. But we do not need measurements to feel the truth of that ritual. We need only to imagine the final dip in the cold pool. You step into the frigarium, the cold room, and the shock tightens your skin. Your pores close. Your blood gathers toward your core. And for a moment, you are not thinking about the metal blade or the oil or the sponge on the stick. You are just present, clean, alive. There is something deeply satisfying about a system so simple that it cannot be improved by marketing. Oil, sweat, scrape, rinse. Repeat. The Romans refined this over centuries, and every refinement made the ritual more social, more embedded. The toilet paper question people always ask feels smaller when you see the full picture. Of course, they had no toilet paper. They had a sponge on a stick, but they also had running water in their latrines, cold and warm public baths, and a social expectation that you did not enter polite company while reeking of the city. The absence of soap was not a failure. It was a fork in the road. They took a different path entirely, one that led to the same destination of clean skin, steady hands, and fresh-smelling tunics. Could you do it? That is the uncomfortable question. Could you, stripped of all your bottles and tubes, manage to keep yourself clean with nothing but oil, a blade, and running water? The answer is yes. And that yes is the real revelation. Not because you are smarter than the Romans, because you belong to the same species that solved this problem once already. The knowledge is not lost. It is sleeping in your body, waiting for the moment when the shower breaks and the old tools suddenly make sense again. Nobody teaches you how to scrape your skin clean. But the moment you try, the motion feels natural. The slight pressure, the angle, the way the blade follows the curve of your shin. Your body remembers what your mind never learned. There is a word for that feeling. It is the same word you feel when you step into cold water on a hot day or when you eat bread baked in fire. Recognition. Not of a fact, but of a practice. A habit that your ancestors perfected and passed down in the muscle memory of the species. The Romans built aqueducts that still stand, they mapped roads that still connect cities, and they cleaned themselves every day without a bar of soap, using nothing more than oil and a curved piece of metal. That recognition of a practice your own hands already know is the thread we pull in every video. Subscribe to keep walking this path of rediscovery, because the next revelation is never the last. Comment below with the one tool from this ritual you would reach for first: oil, blade, or running water. Here is the deepest part of the secret, the one that escapes the history books. The ritual was never about the dirt. It was about the encounter with your own body. When you scrape the oil from your skin, you must look at yourself. You must feel the shape of your own back, the bend of your elbow, the places where your body folds and hides. There is no distraction in that room. No screen, no schedule, No message waiting to be answered. Just you, in the steam, attending to yourself the way a gardener attends to a plant. That daily encounter is the thing we lost when we invented the quick shower. We outsourced our cleanliness to bottles and forgot that the act of washing could be a form of attention, a way of saying, I am here and I matter enough to care for my own skin. So when you ask how the Romans cleaned themselves without soap or toilet paper, the answer is not a single tool. It is a cascade of small choices, each one thoughtful, each one rehearsed until it became instinct. Oil to lift the day from your skin, the strigil to shear it away, the bath to soften and warm, the cold plunge to seal and awaken, and the sponge on a stick, kept separate, kept simple, kept in the latrine where it reminded you that even the lowliest function deserves a solution. The full loop closes slowly. You started in the steam, watching a man scrape his arm, sure that this was strange. Now you know the strangeness was only unfamiliarity. The logic was always there, hiding in plain sight. We remember, underneath all our modern tools, the impulse to tend to the skin we live in. The Romans gave it form. We gave it chemistry. But the root is the same. So the next time you step out of a shower, feel the weight of that small act. You did something that every ancestor of yours did in every climate, in every era, with whatever tools they could find. You cleaned yourself. You welcomed yourself back into the world of the living. That quiet victory is older than Rome, and it will outlast whatever we invent next. The steam fades, the blade rests, the sponge dries by the running gutter, and you, standing clean on the warm stones, understand at last that you were never far from the ancient world. You were just wearing it on your skin the whole time.